In this video, we're going to go through setting up seller Stripe accounts on your Bubble.io marketplace app. So I'm assuming you're building a platform like Airbnb or Uber, where your platform sits in between the buyers and the sellers of a good or service. So in the case of an Airbnb, the platform is Airbnb, the Airbnb hosts are the sellers, and we have the customers on this side of the transaction, with Airbnb or the platform taking a percentage of each sale. Now, one of the key things to consider when onboarding merchants or sellers to your marketplace app is what type of Stripe Connect account you're going to set up for them, because there's a number of different options you can use. And I think this Stripe documentation page here, the Connect integration guide, is really, really useful. And particularly this section on the right hand side, it kind of shows all the options you can use for onboarding sellers and creating accounts for them. And we're going to go through this first of all, and then we're going to build out the workflows in the Bubble app itself. You don't need to worry too much about this onboarding one. We're only going to be dealing with a hosted onboarding, and that's when the user actually navigates to a Stripe hosted web page and completes the onboarding there. Dashboard access is really key. You can choose to either give your sellers access to a full standard Stripe account dashboard or a lighter weight Express dashboard. You can read more about the different types of dashboards in the documentation just down here, and you can change it to Stripe versus Express. It's not too often I see people, and I've seen a lot of people build apps with Stripe Connect and Bubble, but it's quite rare that none is the option here. But what is really important beyond just the dashboard itself is the kind of knock-on effects, because you'll see if you choose Stripe as the dashboard here, then Stripe recommends you use direct charges and you don't use destination or separate charges and transfers. Whereas if you pick Express, it's the opposite. It's recommended you use destination and separate charges and transfers. And then beyond that, again, if you choose Stripe, then you can choose who pays the Stripe fees. Does your platform or does your connected account? But if you choose Express, you'll see here it's always your platform who is paying the Stripe fees. So in reality, I've seen two routes that most people take. And the first one is you choose the Stripe standard dashboard access, you choose direct charges, and you let the connected accounts pay all the Stripe fees. Additionally, Stripe is responsible for any negative balance liability. So what that means is if there's a chargeback or dispute, it's actually Stripe who takes on that risk. Whereas if you choose Express, you'll see here that your platform is actually responsible for that negative balance liability. So like I said, option one that I see a lot of people take is they choose to give access to the full Stripe dashboard. They choose to use direct charges. They choose for connected accounts to pay the Stripe fees, and let Stripe be responsible for the negative balance liability. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build out this workflow, and then we're going to come back to the second one, which is people choose Express, destination charges, and then the platform pays the Stripe fees. But let's start off with the standard dashboard access. Okay, I have a Bubble app here, and it's like a marketplace where people can sell services. So you pay X amount of money and you get, digital marketing or SEO or whatever it may be. And the first thing I'm going to do, actually, before I go into Bubble, is I'm going to go into my Stripe dashboard. I have assumed for the purposes of this video that you've set up a Stripe account. This is actually a really old Stripe account that I've set up before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to Sandbox. And a sandbox is essentially like a test environment. You can use the API keys from this and process transactions, but it's not real. It's not real money. So it's a really useful way of testing out your integration. You can see there they've given us a name, which I don't really know, but let's go with this one instead. Actually, let's try one more. Yeah, let's go with Vermilion Tunnel. We're going to create the account from scratch, so we're not getting any data in here. And then we're going to create our sandbox. And you can see from the top of the screen that we are in a sandbox. Changes here doesn't affect our actual account. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to more. I'm going to go to Connect. And you'll see here I need to click on the Get Started with Connect. This is going to take me through a personalized kind of onboarding. I'm going to fly through this because even though it's going to give us some scenarios on what, options to choose, it doesn't actually really matter because we're going to be building our own integration in Bubble. So you can go through this at your own leisure, and it is kind of useful to understand the different types of payment scenarios you might use, but I'm just going to fast forward through it here in the background. Okay, we've finished that onboarding, and now we need to connect our Stripe account to Bubble. And to do that, we're going to be using a plugin. The plugin we're going to be using in this video is the Stripe Connect Marketplace plugin, which is a Cranford Tech plugin. You can add it to your own app by clicking on the Add Plugins button and just searching for Stripe Connect Marketplace, again, created by Cranford Tech. Once you've installed it, you're going to need to scroll down here to the very bottom, and we need to put in some API keys. And the first one we're going to do is the Stripe publishable key, which is this one here. I'm going to go to developers down here in the bottom left. I'm going to click on API keys, and I'm going to copy the publishable key, and I'm going to put it in here. Because we're testing this out on the test version of our Bubble app, I'm not actually going to fill out the first 3 fields here, but if I was deploying it to live, I absolutely would fill them out, and I would make sure that I'm using the live Stripe keys as well. For secret key, I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it in here. And then for the API key -dev, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the word bearer, a space, and then paste in the secret key again. And our plugin is now effectively connected to our Stripe account, so we can start building out our workflows. And the way this application is structured, users are going to click on a register button, and then they're going to have to choose whether they are a freelancer or a customer. In our case, we're thinking about the people who are selling their services on this platform. So I'm going to register as a freelancer. Again, I'm not going to go through these workflows just because they're not too relevant to the Stripe Connect part. I'm just going to fill out these details really quickly. And once we sign up, we're brought to this profile page. And straight away, you can see I've have this, you need to register for a Stripe account before you're able to list services for sale on the marketplace, and this not active button. So I do recommend you put in something to let users know that they actually need to register for a Stripe account, because otherwise they may not know. And just to give you a sense of how this is structured, in my database under the user data type, I have this field here that says charges enabled, yes-no. And for every new user by default, it's set to no. And then if I go to the profile page, which is inside here, and if we click on this, you'll see that I actually have, okay, it's active here, but I'm using a conditional to say, look, when the current user's charge enabled is no, then this text saying you need to register for an account is visible. And the same on this circle, it's actually red when current user's charges enabled is no, and the same for that active one. I'm using a similar condition here, on this kind of area that's saying register for a Stripe account. When the current user's charges enabled is yes, this isn't visible because if they've already registered for an account, we don't want to tell them to register again. But let's start building out a workflow associated with this so our user actually can register for a Stripe account. So I'm going to go to edit workflow. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to plugins, and there's a bunch of actions that come with this Stripe Connect Marketplace plugin. They're all really well documented, but I'm just going to focus on the key ones we need today to get up and running and get accounts for our sellers. So the action we want here is this create account. Now, I will say if you look a bit further down, there are some other actions, create express account, and there's a create standard account one here as well somewhere. These are slightly older actions, and this create account one is the one that's most up to date with Stripe's latest updates. So I'd recommend using this. And it looks like there's a lot of fields we need to fill out here, but it's actually not too bad. First one is the country. And you can see here under documentation, this is the country in which the account holder resides or in which the business is legally established. It should be a 2-digit country code. And if you're not sure what country code you want to use, you can get a list here on the IBAN.com website. I'm going to use IE because that's the country code for Ireland. That's where my platform is actually legally established. So that just makes things easier. One question I do get sometimes is what if users can choose from a drop down, how do I get all the country codes in there? Unfortunately, there's no easy way. The best way I've seen people do it is create an option set with a list of all the country codes they want to provide, and then reference that option set in a drop down and get that drop down's value inside there. Email is going to be equal to the current user's email. And then these three fields here actually relate to these three fields that we have on our integration guide. So let me just bring this over here. The first one is the Stripe fees payer. And you can see here it defines who's responsible for paying the Stripe fees. Is it going to be the account or is it going to be the application? And you can see here we have who pays the Stripe fees, the account or the application, i.e. the platform. And in our case, we want to go to the account. We don't want our application to actually have to pay the Stripe fees. We want the connected accounts themselves to have to do it. So we're going to leave that in account. Who is liable for losses? In our case, again, we want Stripe to be responsible for the negative balance liability. So if there's chargebacks or disputes, again, the risk is on them and our platform won't have to pay up if anything like that arises. So we'll leave that there. And then dashboard access, we've decided to leave it on full. Full is essentially the full Stripe dashboard, whereas if we went to Express, we would choose Express down here. Payout interval, this is essentially how often your users are going to get paid out. So let's say they make, a sale on the 2nd day of the month and another sale on the 20th day of the month. Are they going to get paid out the next day? Are they going to get paid out the next week? Or are they going to get paid out daily? You can also choose manual payouts, which means you yourself need to trigger at a later date when the payout occurs. This can be useful in more advanced payment flows, but just for the purposes today, I'm going to choose monthly. And I'm going to say our users get paid out on the 5th day of every month. If you chose weekly, you can choose what day of the week they get paid out as well. There's some more advanced options there, but we don't need to worry about them in this video. Okay, so we're creating an account. What we're going to do then is we're going to make changes to the current user. And what we're going to do is on my user data type here, I have a field called seller account ID Stripe. And whenever an account is created on Stripe for a connected account, we get this account ID back and we want to save it down to our bubble database. So I'm going to say seller account ID is equal to result of step 1, it's Stripe account ID. Let's start off by just doing this. This isn't going to allow our user to fully, onboard, but it's a good start. So let's click on register. And it doesn't really look as though anything has happened, but if we go into our database, if we click on app data and go to users for our latest user here, you'll see we do now have a Stripe account ID. But we actually want to finish the onboarding because at the moment, this user hasn't actually provided any information to Stripe. So what I'm going to do on this workflow is after we've saved down the account ID, I'm going to go down to plugins again. And this time I'm going to go down and I'm going to go and look for the create onboarding link action. This is going to navigate the user to a Stripe hosted portal where they can complete the onboarding. For account, I'm going to put in current users seller's account ID, which is the thing we've just created in step 1. Refresh URL. So this is where the user is going to be directed to if for some reason that link isn't working. Not very likely, but let's just fill it out. And what I like to do is just put in this URL. And then at the end, I'm going to put in a question mark to indicate that it's a URL parameter. Put in refresh equals true. The return URL is where the user is going to be directed to after they've completed the onboarding. Again, I'm going to put in this URL. And this time I'm going to put in return equals true. I'm going to leave the onboarding flow as upfront onboarding. And then I'm going to click on navigation, open an external website, and we're going to put in the result of step 3 and its URL, which is coming in there automatically. So last time nothing seemed to happen. I'm expecting to see something this time, and I'm going to actually go through it in step-by-step mode. So we're clicking on register. We're creating an account using all these values here. We've now updated the current user with a new seller account ID. We're creating an onboarding link, and you can see there we have our various return and refresh URLs, and then we're navigating to this link here that's just been created. This is bringing me to this Stripe onboarding portal. So this is where the seller is going to provide Stripe with the information they need to actually give them an account. So I'm going to click on submit here. And I'm going to put in a password. And then I'm going to have to set up two-factor authentication, which I'll do quickly here in the background. And then Stripe is going to ask you to provide all that information. I'm actually not going to go through all this with you because it's going to differ based on what country the seller is based in. So there's no point in me showing you stuff that may be completely irrelevant. Instead, I'm just going to skip through all this part until we get to the very end of this Stripe onboarding process. Okay, so I provided all the information that Stripe was looking for. So I'm going to go down here and I've added a test bank account. I'm going to click on agree and submit. I'm brought back to my dashboard page, and a couple of things to note here. First of all, I'm noticing that the return equals true is not in the page URL, and that's actually because I forgot that we were in debug mode when we set to this URL, and that basically means a double page URL parameter, which messed things up. The second thing is, even though we have created an account and been onboarded successfully, we're still getting this your profile is not active. I'll come back to that in a second. But let's take a look at our Stripe dashboard. And I just need to sign in again here. Okay, we're logged back in, and if we go to our connected accounts, we'll now see we have two connected accounts. This is just one that I tried earlier, but this is the one that we have just created, and you can see here it is enabled, but that there are actions required. I'm going to come on to this in a second because it can be quite important, but I think first of all it's important that our dashboard actually reflects that this user can now process payments and that they can accept charges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my editor, and on the workflow tab for the views profile, I'm going to add a workflow that runs on page load. So I'm going to say when page is loaded, we're going to make changes to a thing. The thing we're going to change is the current user, and what we're going to change is their charges enabled. And we're going to use an API call that comes with the Stripe Marketplace plugin to check whether or not charges have been enabled. We know they have. So once I've finished enabling this, what I'm expecting to see is when we run this workflow on page load, the charges enabled is going to change from no to yes. So let's go to get data from an external API. Let's go to Stripe Connect, retrieve account details, the very first one up here. And let's set account ID as current user's seller account ID. And then you can actually get a bunch of information from this. It's really useful if you want to get some details on your user. But what we're concerned with here is this charges enabled field, which you can see evaluates to yes or no. So I'm now going to refresh my application. And you can see this changed. It now says your profile is active. You can list services for sale on the marketplace. And the reason that's happened is because in my database, for this user, charge enabled has been changed to yes, which is triggering the conditionals on all these elements, and the user is now good to go in terms of listing services on the marketplace. But I want to go back to one thing just here, because you'll see here that it looks as though Stripe is going to pause payouts soon, which basically means this user isn't going to be able to accept payouts, i.e. get money from their Stripe account into their bank account, because there's something required. What we could do is we could just copy this link and we could send it to that specific user, but it might also be useful to build this into our dashboard. So what I would do is I would say, I would create another kind of group here, and let's just call this group Stripe complete registration. And this is only going to be visible when current user's charges enabled is no, because this is going to cause their charges enabled to go back to no once this kind of, once this soon period ends. And current user's Stripe account ID is not empty. Then it's going to be visible, just to make sure it's not visible on page load. So what we're saying is, look, if you do have a Stripe account, but your charges aren't enabled, that's when this group here is going to be visible. And what we can say is something like Stripe requires additional info. Please complete your registration. And we could put the button here to say complete onboarding. And it's actually really easy. All you need to do is you need to create a new onboarding link. So again, if we go to plugins and go to Stripe Connect, create onboarding link, going to fill out these details again. So current users, seller account ID, refresh URL. It's going to be exactly the same as last time. And same for the return URL. So again, the difference with this workflow and the workflow they're actually registering is we're not creating a new account. We're just navigating them back to the onboarding portal. And what we need to do at the end of that is also just say, open an external website. Result of step 1, it's URL. So I'm not going to go through this because they're just going to be asked to add one more piece of information. But you can see here, if in the background, I change that user's charges enabled from yes to no, they do now have a Stripe account ID. They do not have charges enabled. So, you can see here, Stripe requires additional info. Please complete your registration. You would also probably change the conditional on this one here so that it's only visible when current charges enabled is no and current users seller account ID is not empty. So they do have a Stripe account. You should really only have, one of these options. And you can see that is not the case there actually, because again, what have we done? We've changed it back, have we? Yeah, we've changed it back to yes. If we change it back to no, that'll hide that. Okay, I'm getting kind of mixed up here because of on-page load and all that. It's getting changed back to yes every time, but I think you get the idea behind what I'm trying to do. Okay, so now that we have onboarded that user, what I want to do is give them access to their Stripe dashboard. So I'm going to go to this Access Dashboard button here, and I'm going to add a workflow. And really important, you might remember from our Connect integration guide, if we chose an Express dashboard access, we would have had these kind of knock-on effects. And if you're using an Express dashboard, I'm actually going to show this in a minute. There is a specific action to create an Express dashboard link. However, that is not the case with the standard full Stripe account. To navigate a user with a standard Stripe account to their dashboard, you can actually just paste in the URL. And what we can do is for navigation, we can open an external website. I'm going to paste in a URL that I just copied in the background here. You can see it's dashboard.stripe.com/b/ and then you need to add in their own account. So you put in the current user's seller account ID and we'd open it in a new tab. So if we try that, and then when I click on the Access Dashboard button, they're going to be brought to their Stripe dashboard where they can log into their own Stripe account. They probably already will be logged in. It's just a bit confusing here because I'm logged in as a platform account, but they'll have access to their Stripe dashboard like you usually would. Okay, so that is kind of our scenario 1 here, where we have the Stripe account, direct charges, connected accounts are paying the fees, and Stripe have the negative balance liability. I'm going to come on to the charge type and who pays the Stripe fees in terms of showing you examples in the next video in this series, but I just want to focus on the onboarding and the dashboard access in this one. So now that we've done what I consider the common path number 1, I think it makes sense to go on to creating an Express account and navigating the user to their dashboard there. So very simple. All we change is really when we're registering the user for a Stripe account, instead of giving them full dashboard access, we'd simply give them Express dashboard access. Now, you will also have to, who pays the Stripe fees? It's going to be your platform. Unfortunately, if you want an Express account, you do have to have your platform paying the Stripe fees. So I'm just going to change that. And then liable for losses, you will have seen as well, it's going to be your platform that's going to be responsible. If you use if your connected accounts use the Express dashboard, then unfortunately your platform has to be liable for any negative balances. Okay, so let's log out as our current user and let's register as a new one. Just need to refresh the page. And I'm going to register again. Okay, signed up here, and just like last time, our profile is not active. We can't currently list things for sale on the marketplace, but let's register for an account. And we're getting an error here, which is actually a good reason to investigate debugging errors, because you're going to run into some errors like this when you're building out your Stripe integration. It's inevitable, but they're usually really easy to fix. Okay, so I'm going to go back to, I need to log back in. Again, this can happen if you're testing, using your platform account, but then also registering other accounts. It can get kind of confusing, but let's go back and let's go to the developer section of our dashboard. Let's click on logs here. And this is where you're going to get all the information on why something didn't work. Okay, so we have two errors here, and you can see here the most recent error is with this account links post call, and that's linked to the create onboarding link action that we built in our bubble workflow. And you can see here, you passed an empty string for account. We assume empty values and return to unset a parameter. Okay, the rest of it, not relevant. So the issue is when we ran this create onboarding link, Stripe wasn't getting any value in here. And the reason that happened is because one step earlier, when we were actually creating the account, we didn't actually create the account in the first place. And the reason is that we haven't accepted this agreement here. So it says, please review the responsibilities of managing losses for connected accounts at this link. So let's go to this area here and we'll have to accept an agreement of some sort. So if we go to settings, connect, platform profile, you'll see here we have to acknowledge both of these waivers and agreements. And what this is basically saying, and again, read into this in your own kind of time, but we are going to be responsible for any negative liabilities, negative balances. That basically means if there's chargebacks, if there's disputes, it's us that's going to be responsible for that rather than Stripe. So you can read the full details here, but I'm just going to accept that. And I'm going to accept this. And this time, if I try and create an Express account, we should be brought to the onboarding portal. And you can see that is what's happening. So I'm going to fly through this here in the background. Okay, I've added all of those details. So I'm going to click on agree and submit. And we'll be brought back to our return URL. And this time you can see the return equals true actually is in the page URL. Remember last time it didn't work because we were in debug mode when leaving our bubble app. And we have registered our Stripe account. Let's go into our connected accounts. Okay, we're logged back in, and if we go to connected accounts, you'll see we have a new one, Alex Clark here. And if we click on this, you'll see that he is able to take payments. And I'm just trying to see is there anything different here in terms of it being an Express account. Probably not noticeable here on the dashboard, but again, we have only given Alex access to the Express dashboard. So what that means is that when we are providing access via this access dashboard button, instead of opening an external website and bringing them directly to the main Stripe dashboard, instead we're going to go to Stripe Connect, create Express dashboard link. Stripe account ID is going to be the current user's seller account ID. And then we're simply going to open an external website, and it's going to be the result of step one, its URL, which is getting populated there. So let's check out that Stripe Express dashboard. And you can see here we're brought to a slightly different login. Because I'm in test mode, I can just use that test code. And then we're logged in and we can see all the earnings that Alex Clark is going to get. Nothing there just yet. We can also see when the next payout is scheduled for. You might remember when we were creating the account, we scheduled it for the 5th day of every month, which is why the 5th of August is the next payout date. So yeah, kind of a lighter version of the full Stripe dashboard, which can be more than sufficient for a lot of sellers on your platform. So that's the end of this video. In the next one, I'm going to be going through the various charge types and who pays Stripe fees on each transaction.